exactly, what in the world is this telling us here?
Well, if you're a Muslim apologist, and I mean the highest level Muslim apologist, right? The most popular Muslim apologist in the world, they quote this verse, chapter 5, verse 16 of the Song of Solomon, and claim that this is actually a prophecy about Muhammad. And the reason they find this important is they believe that Muhammad is actually mentioned by name. They think that this has been wrongly translated, that it's a name there in the original, and that you shouldn't translate a name. So what this actually says is, his mouth is most sweet, and he is Muhammad. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. So this is actually a prophecy about Muhammad, because in the Hebrew, it's Mahmadim. So Mahmad sounds like Muhammad, and therefore it's I'm trying not to laugh. It's a passage about Muhammad, and you have Muhammad mentioned by name. What more could you ask if you're looking for prophecies about Muhammad?
You mean he's not altogether lovely?
But why?
Yeah, well, he is if it's if that's connected to his name. But what's wrong with this? Well, we're going to find a lot of things that are wrong with this. But first of all, let's start with the obvious for people who've read the Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon is a short poetic book about a loving, physical, sexual relationship between Solomon and his bride. Some Christians want to read this as a metaphor, for Christ's love with his church. But I mean, let's face it, according to Christianity, God invented sex. God invented sex. There's nothing wrong with a sexual relationship between a husband and a wife, and a husband and wife celebrating this relationship. We at least have that in the Song of Solomon. And just to give you an idea, I'll read chapter 7, verses 1 through 3. Solomon says to his bride, "How beautiful your sandaled feet, O prince's daughter. Your graceful legs are like jewels, the work of an artist's hands. Your navel is a rounded goblet that never lacks blended wine. Your waist is a mound of wheat encircled by lilies. Your breasts are like two fawns, like twin fawns of a gazelle." Or lots of Muslims read this and go, "What? This sort of thing shouldn't be in a book of God." There are Muslims who will point to this and say, "You see, this proves that the Bible's not the word of God." And yet these same Muslims will then go to the Song of Solomon and say, "You see, Muhammad is mentioned by name right in the middle of this. This proves that Islam is true." Very interesting stuff. But let's go to the chapter in question, which would be chapter 5 of Song of Solomon. In the first verse of chapter 5, Solomon says, "I have come into my garden, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb and my honey. I have drunk my wine and my milk." You catch that? Drinking wine. "I have drunk my wine and my milk."
Wow, I did not know that.
He didn't say he drank his camel urine and milk. He said he drank his wine and milk. So this doesn't sound like a very good Muslim. So the part about the wine in the Quran must have been corrupted. Got to be.
Yeah.
So the Quran's been corrupted. Yep. So notice we have drinking wine right here in the chapter that's supposed to be about Muhammad. But let's go ahead and read this so-called prophecy about. Now, if you read it, there's nothing that remotely resembles a prophecy anywhere here. But Muslims are reading a prophecy there, so let's go ahead and read it in context. In verse 8. Solomon's bride says to her friends, "Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my beloved, what will you tell him? Tell him I am faint with love." So they're looking for her beloved. Who is that? Well, according to Muslims, it's Muhammad, because that's who this ultimately refers to. Her friends respond, though, in verse 9 by asking her, "How is your beloved better than others, most beautiful of women? How is your beloved better than others that you so charge us?" So she's talking about how wonderful her beloved is, and they say, "How is he better? How is your beloved better than anyone else?" Keep in mind, this is Solomon's bride being asked, what's so great about Solomon?
Right.
Okay, and here we have the answer. In verses 10 through 16, we have her answer. She's describing what makes Solomon so much better than other men. And she says, "My beloved is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head is purest gold. His hair is wavy and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by the water streams, washed in milk, mounted like jewels. His cheeks are like beds of spice, yielding perfume. His lips are like lilies dripping with myrrh. His arms are rods of gold set with topaz. His body is like polished ivory decorated with lapis lazuli. His legs are pillars of marble set on bases of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as its cedars. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend, daughters of Jerusalem.
Are you telling me Muhammad's body is described to us here in the
and not only that, it's the wife of Solomon.
describing it?
It's the wife of Solomon who's asked why her beloved, the one she really loves, is so much better than other men. And she gives this description and then, according to Muslims, identifies him as Muhammad. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is Muhammad. This is my beloved. So at the bare minimum, Muslims are claiming that Solomon's wife
1600 years earlier.
was lusting after Muhammad, right? Because she is clearly obsessed with his physical appearance. And if she's not talking about Solomon here, if this is not about Solomon, if they say, no, this actually Mahmadim, that's Muhammad, then she's talking about Muhammad in this book, talking about how attracted she is to a guy who hasn't been born for many centuries.
Here goes
Do you
another
blame her?
marriage, right?
After having a vision of Muhammad, who